I didn't have the chance to say thank you, and you'll never have to. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. I've already reviewed him, so today I'm showcasing a Batcave's worth of Batman Begins head swaps. As always, just a quick disclaimer that I can't swap figures with this style of neck articulation, so pretty much that means none of these. I'm also not going to be swapping with the Dark Knight because it's the same head. That said, and I did recently pick up the unmasked version. Granted, there's a conversation to be had about how much this actually looks like Christian Bale. The good news is that the head scales well, and for now at least, it's our best option. That said, and for a crazy idea I had, I'd like to try out Blackest Night. If you can't find the Fear Toxin Nightmare variant, this is one paint job away from being a pretty decent substitute. Not only that, but you could even swap out the hands. Otherwise, and sticking with movie figures, here we have Keaton. This is a fascinating window into what Christian Bale in a more classic Batman movie costume could have been like. Fun fact, Spin Master accidentally swapped some of the heads on their 4-inch Christian Bale and Michael Keaton figures. So, if you have one of those, here's a 7-inch scale version to go with it. Conversely, and not surprisingly, I like this a lot. I still don't think that Keaton is one of McFarlane's best likenesses, but I really like him in this batsuit. Next up, and here's George Clooney. Christian Bale was the better Batman performer, but George Clooney still has the best Batman jaw, making this combo the best of both worlds. Other way around, and I'll be honest, I actually kinda dig this. Except, of course, for the nipples. For the next Batman after Bale, and here's Ben Affleck. In terms of straight-up comic accuracy, nothing compares to the Batfleck suit. That said, I do prefer the slightly longer ears on Bale. The hole for the jaw, however, is much better on Batfleck. As much as I prefer the Dawn of Justice costume, though, this is still a pretty good combo. Fortunately, the likeness on this Justice League head is much stronger. This one looks much closer to Ben, and if this inspires any of you customizers out there, here you go. This, however, is the combo I was more interested in. This suit is just a great all-around armored Batman, and it would have been really cool if he had something like this when he went up against Bane. Throwing Affleck's likeness to the wind, though, and here we have his appearance in The Flash. Generally speaking, most of the heads I try on this body are a bit too small and sit a bit too high, and for the most part that's still the case here, but I think you could actually fudge this one. On the flip side, I had no hope for this combination, but I actually kinda dig it. You'd need to do some painting, especially the eyes, but I like this mask better than Bale's, and to be honest, it even bears a faint resemblance to him. As long as we're talking about the Flash though, and here we have Michael Keaton. I didn't have any expectations going into this, but I really dig it. Not only does the neck have the thickness I would have really liked to have seen on the Begins figure, but I never realized until now just what a perfect synthesis this costume is between the classic Keaton and Batman Begins. Other way around, and I've made no bones about the fact that I really dislike this head, but stylistically it does fit in with Keaton's aesthetic in the Flash movie. For one last live action though, and here's Robert Pattinson from The Batman. Not to beat a dead horse, but I'm not that crazy about Robert Pattinson's mask, so in general this combination doesn't do anything for me personally. That said, I really do like his batsuit, though you're gonna want to find a shorter peg because this one sits a bit high. Either way, I like it a lot better than the costume that Bale ended up with in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Switching to comics and video games though, and in basic order of release, here's Detective Comics 1000. Obviously this is a mismatch, but it kind of reminds me of that Beware the Batman cartoon, and since I doubt we're ever going to get a figure of that, this could be a good starting point for a custom. Other way around, and I still maintain that just about any head swap is an improvement, but McFarlane's come such a long way since then that this body is pretty out of date. For one that I'm curious about though, and here we have the Grim Knight. Out of all the live action Batmans, Bale's was the most anti-pew-pew, so this more Punisher style version of the character is a cool what if. Just a heads up though, I don't have the head clicked into place because the peg is too short. Other way around, and I had to swap out for a shorter peg because this one was too long. If you like the costume but wanted a more comic style version, this is a pretty good match. As you can see, the color and finish of the cowl is identical. For our first video game same comparison, and here's Arkham Knight. This is one that I was particularly excited for, and I love it even more than I expected. I really wish the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises costumes were closer to this. Other way around, and you could use this as a fun alternate skin. The head's realistic enough and scales well, though compared to that armor, this does feel a bit stripped down. For one that skews a bit small, and here's DC Rebirth, I like the overall design of this head, but as usual, it's too small, and also as usual, this is too big. Still, I can't help but wonder if some gold piping around the Begins emblem would have really helped it to stand out. Next up, and for one of my favorites, and here's Future's End. In the comics, this costume doesn't belong to Bruce, but thanks to the details in the neck, it goes really well, and would make for a solid live-action costume. Other way around, and I knew I was going to like this, but I didn't realize I was going to like it this much. With nothing to break up the black but those piercing eyes and brass belt, this is very menacing. For one of my lesser favorites, and here's Dark Detective, unless you want to shave off those ears and give it a repaint, this head really isn't going to work. If you did though, it would probably look cool. Personally though, I was more curious about this. With Bale's cowl being more of a helmet, I thought it would be interesting. It also would have been a cool direction for them to have gone in the finale of The Dark Knight Rises. The idea being that with little time and few resources, he just kinda had to throw something together, showing that it was Bruce's strength and not Batman's gear that overpowered Bane. For one that I get a lot of requests for but tend to forget about, and here we have the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. This head is kind of realistic without looking like any particular actor, so if you wanted to do something with it, you absolutely could. Other way around, and hear me out. In the comics, they've revealed that there's a Zur-En-Arrh version of Batman for every individual multiverse, so instead of the Jokerized editions, why not Zur-En-Arrh variants of all the Batman figures? McFarlane, if you're listening, I'd totally be down for that. Veering back into video games for a bit, and here's Injustice 2. The thing about the Injustice 2 suit is it kind of feels like it drew a lot of inspiration from the Dark Knight costume, so in that regard, this works pretty well. Give it a paint job, and this would be a pretty fun custom. Other way around, I don't like this as much. The head sculpted well, but the chin strap makes his face look a lot smaller, which just throws off the balance overall. Next up is the Arkham Knight Sinestro Corps skin. While I don't think anyone's looking for a Sinestro Corps Christian Bale, this is still a good base body for customs. Just be warned though that the head's just sitting there because none of my neck pegs are long enough. Other way around, and you're actually going to need a shorter peg for this one, and even then it doesn't really sit right. It's a fine head, but I don't think that this combo is worth the trouble. And then for one final video game, and here's the fan favorite Arkham City. Side note, this Arkham City repaint is one of my favorite Mattel Batman figures, mainly because it reminds me so much of Batman Begins. That being the case, and unsurprisingly, I love this combination. It might not be for everyone, but based on my nostalgia for that old Mattel one, it really does it for me. Other way around, and I like this one a lot too. The proportions might not be the most realistic, but it just goes to show what the Begins costume could have been like if they had made it black and gray. For something a bit different though, and here's the very noble Dark Knight of Steel. As I've said before, this mask is probably a bit too detailed, but I love all the scrapes and dings, and it's realistic to pass enough for live action. Aesthetically, I'm not entirely sure how much of a match this is, though all the angles of the cowl do work well with the angles of the armor. If you do this though, you're gonna need to repaint that neck. Next up is Commissioner Gordon as Batman. Even though it's not Bruce, this is one of the better comic style Batman heads, so if that's something you'd like to do, this would work. This one strikes a really good balance between the thickness of the neck and the width of the head. Other way around though, and this does not work at all. The head is way too big, and the body is way too spindly and stylized. Back to Bruce, and here's the black and gray version of Nightfall. If Batman was just a very athletic person in tights, this is probably the most realistic body for that. Conversely, if you wanted to make the Batman Begins suit look more comic style, this is a great head for it. It's realistic without going over the top, but there's a bit of gloss to the cowl you'll need to take care of. From Batman Begins to Batman Reborn, and here's Dick Grayson. If you like the Nightfall combo, but prefer the more Hush style logo, this is your combination. It also benefits from a wired cape. Not only that, but like the Batman Begins suit, has a metallic utility belt. Other way around, and this is another option for those who'd like a more comic style head. While this is good for Dick Grayson, I don't like it quite as much for Bruce. Still, I'd be remiss if I didn't show you. Lastly, and based on the artwork of Lee Bermejo, Batman Noel. I think I may have saved the best for last. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. For a realistic, more tactical Batman that also feels like the comic costume, this is the way to go. Other way around, and as McFarlane Batman heads go, this one is a tough one to beat. It's got a good, realistic vibe, scales pretty well, plus if you have the original page punchers, that means you get a second alternate head. And hey, thanks to the color and finish, this one matches even better. Which one was your favorite? Sound off in the comments below. For more Batman head swaps, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.